everyone. We are so happy to welcome you to the very first Oslo International School TEDx event. This TEDx event was inspired by another similar event that I saw at my last school, where I saw student members and community members coming together to build something incredible where we could be inspired and educated together. At OIS, I found amazing collaborators in my peers and my teachers, and me and Victoria here, were able to create such an amazing event. I am so happy to welcome you here to this year's theme, The Butterfly Effect, where small changes and choices can have great consequences.
Today we have a wide range of speakers, and I'm going to introduce the first three speakers we have before the intermission. So first we have Eirik Normann Hansen, as well as Homo Hassan and Kim Evanson. So I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Eirik Normann Hansen.
Some sound. Hey. How are you? Good, yeah, that's good. It's so good to be here, and thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for organizing this. It's great. My name is Eirik, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the reason why I ended up doing what I'm doing today. And it all started actually in 1978. I was 7 years old. My uncle came home from the United States of America, and he brought me this thing here. My very first computerized toy. It's called Merlin. You can play tic-tac-toe, you can program music and stuff like that, and I was just blown away. This is a real computer. And then, you know, at that point in time, we had no clue where we were going with all that technology. And that's my story, because we didn't know anything. And just a few years after, you know, we had Star Wars. I was really into science fiction, and I was consuming all the science fiction I could find. And I was so much looking forward to, you know, this was in the 1980s. A lot of the science fiction movies, they were about the year 2000. And I was so much looking forward to growing up in cities like this. We were supposed to have houses like that. It's going to be amazing. And then suddenly, finally, year 2000 was here. I remember getting up real early that morning, you know, running out into the living room, looking out of the window. And I was kind of disappointed. You know, the world I live in still looks like this. We have taken over my parents-in-law's house. It's not a futuristic house at all. The closest I got to the future I was dreaming about was that I was one of the first people in Norway buying one of the first electric cars. I saw it online, and I just had to have it. And it was delivered outside my house on a truck. And I got this one. And it's a car that you don't get into, actually you bear it in a sense. And it couldn't fly, and it couldn't do anything. So the world wasn't like I was expecting at all. But what we had no clue about, you know, going back to 1980s, was that we were going to have this thing here in the year 2000. This is a representation of the internet. And just imagine, by the year 2000, we took that for granted. You know, everything around us was suddenly online. We had cell phones and tablets and computers, and our TVs were online, and cars were online, and my watch is online. Everything is online, and we just use it and the closest kind of channel we have. And this has changed, you know, the way that people are, how we are prioritizing stuff. There was a survey done a couple of years ago. They asked 14 to 29-year-olds what they were most afraid of losing in the world. And what do you think they were most afraid of losing in the world? The mobile phone. Yeah. I don't know about you, but have any of you, you know, forgotten your phone back home in the morning, going to work or school? Yeah. What do you do then? Yeah, go back home, right? Yeah. And you might get in a bit late, and you say, "Sorry, I'm late today, but I forgot my phone," and that's probably okay. You know, the second thing that most afraid of losing was the internet, and then further down the list, they started to be afraid of losing physical stuff, like cars, for instance. And that's because we changed that, you know. We created new models for fixing that. We don't have to own anything anymore. It was kind of worrisome, maybe, in this survey that only 43% said they were most afraid of losing their car. But I guess if you have your cell phone and the internet, the rest of that is taken care of. So we are living in extremely fascinating times right now, and never before have we been able to do so many things as we can right now, or we have never had so many challenges. It's obviously our responsibility to do the right thing, to make sure that we understand the technology around us, how we can use that in the right way. And then we need to be in control, but we're not, because everything is going so fast. You all heard about this exponential development, right? That's how fast technology is moving. And have you ever thought about how fast that really is? That's pretty hard to grasp, because people, we are humans, we like to do things that we understand, and we understand linear development. So if I compare linear development with the exponential development, just imagine if I were to take 30 steps. I clicked a bit too fast, so you got the answer already. But if I take 30 steps that way, each step is 1 meter. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, I get 30 meters. You understand that? If I could take exponential steps, that would be quite cool. And the first one is 1 meter, the second would be 2 meters, the third would be 4, and then it doubles every time for 30 times. Then I end up going 26 times around the globe instead. And that's how fast technology is moving. And now the world is changing as well. Because of all this, we see an entire new world around us. And last year there was a big survey done. Forrester Research, they figured out that they saw 40% growth in investment in smart infrastructure. The world around us is getting smarter because of technology. And then 80% of people are now, perceiving the world as digital. Just a few years ago we logged on, now we have to log off instead. And then, there are, the World Economic Forum, they did a survey last year, and they figured out that 65% of all 6-year-olds are going to start in jobs that are not invented yet. And that's pretty interesting as well. I mean, if you have a little kid back home and you ask, what are you going to be when you grow up? And they say, I don't know. They're probably right. So the world is changing, and we are doing amazing stuff already. A couple of years ago, and this was because of my little, technology introduction when I was a little kid. I have always been very, very curious about technology. And then a couple of years ago, I entered a survey. I was part of a study where they wondered if you could use implants to monitor your body. And now I'm part of that. And then I ended up, talking to a guy in Sweden. And he sent me to a little piercing studio in Sweden. I've never been to a piercing studio before. I'm pretty, afraid of needles. And I asked the guy, does it hurt? And he didn't say anything. And I just lay there. And then if you're a bit weak-hearted, you have to look away because it ended up like this.
Pust in och pust ut. Fortsätt andas.
Keep on breathing, he says. I was quite pale, and it did hurt. And now I have 4 microchips within my body, and this is part of a project. The first one was to check if it worked. The other one is to put a light bulb in. I can do stuff like this. I can use the printer, I can open my locker, I can pay in a cantina, I can open the door. Now I have one with a light in, and that was to check if I could run a sensor. And now I have one with a sensor as well, a temperature sensor, so I can do my core temperature. And that's part of a survey for the University Hospital in Stockholm to see if we can use these kind of technologies to survey the human body and then to provide healthcare services to people who are not as fortunate as we are to have doctors, around the next corner. And I think that's pretty amazing as well. And now, every year I go to the CES conference in Las Vegas, and I get to try all this cool stuff. And this year, the big hype was, of course, the metaverse and artificial intelligence. And I was able to try this haptic suit on, and I can see a virtual world. And in that virtual world, I met a guy, and because of the glows in the west, I can actually feel the surroundings. I can feel the things around me. So I met a guy, I talked to him, because they use generative AI and some kind of language models. So I could have a natural conversation with that guy. And then suddenly he said, oh, give me a hug. And I gave him a hug, and I could actually feel him touching my back. That was kind of strange. And you can also connect a little device on that so you can smell the surroundings. And now suddenly we have this VR, opportunities. During the pandemic, there was a company in Oslo, they thought it was a pity they couldn't have a Christmas party. So they bought VR goggles to all their employees. They had their Christmas party in VR. And I was invited to do a talk in VR. That was the first time ever. It was just like here. I had to meet up, I was the surprise speaker of the evening, so I had to be there 15 minutes beforehand. And I had to hide, in the back room. And then when everyone was there, I was introduced, I did my talk, and after 15 minutes, it felt, natural as well. And when I was done, two guys came up to me and we started to talk about what I've been talking about. And remember that I was sitting back home, and all of the participants, they were sitting at home as well with VR goggles on. And then suddenly one of them said, oh, there's a free sofa, let's go and have a seat. And we sat down, and it felt so good. We kind of forgot that we had been sitting already. So, and now I have my own office in the metaverse. And I'm trying to, figure out how can we do all this stuff and what can we do with it. And I found this thing on the internet, it's called Next Mind. And it's a thing that you put on the back of your head. And now I calibrated my computer so I can actually control some of simple features on my computer just by looking at it. And that's pretty amazing too. And we are going into one another's head. And then the other day I came across this amazing project here. And this is a cooperation between the San Francisco University and the Berkeley University. And the woman here, she's called Anne, and she had a stroke a couple of years ago, and she lost the ability to speak. And now with AI and sensors and heavy data analytics, they can connect to her speech center in her brain and actually translate what she's thinking. And now she is able to speak again. And that's pretty amazing, just because of technology and the exponential development. So the world is moving forward, and we need to kind of look beyond the obvious, because far too often we are stopping with the first little toy that was not really a big deal, and it couldn't do much other than playing tic-tac-toe. And then suddenly, a couple of years later, we can do this stuff. And I think that's never ever been so important to be a human being as right now. And remember that we have enormous opportunities, and we have big challenges. And it's definitely our responsibility to make the right choices, to do the right things. And then we need to be able to look beyond the obvious, because we are moving into a world that is much more connected and makes it possible to do amazing stuff. So I like to think that because my uncle brought me this, I ended up doing what I'm doing today, traveling around, meeting some of the most advanced technologies in the world, and I'm so fortunate to go around and talk about that and share that knowledge. And my kind of message to all of you is to follow your dream and stay curious. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric, for that wonderful talk. I feel like I am very inspired right now, especially about technology in the future. I don't know about all of you, but please welcome our next speaker, Homa Hassan, to the stage.
Thank you. Am I able to be is that right? Thank you. Good evening, and thank you so much for inviting me this evening. And what an amazing group or team of students you have here. You must be very, very proud of them. My name is Homa, and as you can probably tell from my accent, I am indeed from the UK. I am from London. And I'm Gen X, by the way, so I might have to explain some of my pop cultural references. When I was growing up, my favourite TV show was Cagney and Lacey. It was about two very strong, opinionated female detectives in New York. There was Christine Cagney, who I wanted to be like because she was single and a career woman, and Mary Beth Lacey had a whiny husband and children at home. When I was 12, my father had a contract, so we moved with him. And I went from being a student at a comprehensive school in northwest London to attending a private colonial school in the middle of Africa. It was actually in Malawi. And to say it was a culture shock would be an understatement. In the mid-80s, the country was run by, this was the term it was defined as the life president, but you and I would now call him a dictator. He was very conservative. Women weren't allowed to wear trousers. It was illegal. Skirts had to be below the knee. Men weren't allowed to have hair longer than their nape, otherwise the police would come and cut it. And regardless of whether you were a Malawian or an expat, there was one main road to and from the airport, and when his cortege or his convoy would go to and from the airport, each and every one of us had to leave our classrooms, the fields, our work, stand by the side of the road and clap. So imagine from northwest London to that. But the reason I reference this is because, like many of us, throughout our schools, we always come across, if not one, maybe two, inspiring teachers who form and encourage our passion. And mine was the biology teacher who was a former Rhodesian, so Zimbabwe to the younger ones. And he was a game warden, though we were too afraid to ask him what he did with the poachers. And he used to tell us stories about sharks swimming up the river Zambezi, and he made biology come alive. When I came back to London, it was the mid-80s. It's quite an important reference because it was July 1985. And for those of you who are old enough to remember, it was during the Ethiopian famine. The images, the appalling images, and the Live Aid concert was July 85, Wembley Stadium. I lived actually down the road, and Wembley Stadium became my happy place for many concerts after that. And my biology teacher in the UK, he gave me a passion or opened the door for genetics. Coupled with the famine, genetics, love for biology, I decided that I wanted to study genetic engineering and feed the world. In these days we call it food security, so I thought I was going to go to university and create a wonderful species of rice that would be hardy and feed everyone, end of world hunger. So when I got to university, we didn't actually do genetic engineering until the third year. And this is my butterfly effect, because we had really old-fashioned lecture halls, and the rows that we sat in were very narrow. So left and right-handed people couldn't comfortably sit next to each other. I went to Imperial, where supposedly the crème de la crème, so we found solutions. The left-handed people sat together on one row, and we were a mixture of home students and international students due to Imperial's reputation. So on our row for 3 years we sat together, and we were Nigerian, Pakistani, Israeli, British and Norwegian. So we became quite good friends. And then I started to visit Norway. I was invited for Christmas and New Year. And since '95, I have spent every New Year's Eve in Norway. And apropos Y2K, we were at the Meteorologisk Institute station of Stavern. And my brother and sister had also travelled there. And my friends were showing my brother and sister, who are quite a bit younger than me, around, and showed them the utedo, the outside toilet. And my brother, who was 18, was horrified, and he just said, and they called Pakistan a third world country. Yeah, we're from London. And I've lost my train of thought. Okay, so then I got to the third year. Oh, you know what? I haven't even been showing you my slides. Beg your pardon. Okay, Imperial, this is my lab partner. He carried me through the labs because I discovered in my third year I hated labs. Still loved genetics, but not labs, not lab work. In North America, and in Canada, they had been developing a profession called genetic counselling. So if you remember the thread of Cagney and Lacey, genetic counselling was being a genetic detective. And when I graduated, they had set up the first course in Europe. So we were the first 4 students in Europe who were able to go and study genetic counselling in Manchester. as I'd explained before, I'd also was coming to Norway for New Year's Eve, and I had gone to Rome for a conference to deliver or to present my data about cousin marriages, where I met a wonderful Norwegian geneticist. His late wife was Astrid Nuckelby Heiberg, a very, very amazing woman, and he said to me, "Have you thought about coming to Norway? We need people like you." Because at that time I was thinking about the ethical dilemmas of what I was doing. This was back in the day when Dolly the sheep was emerging. People were very worried about designer babies and what we were capable of. I came for New Year's Eve, met a wonderful medical ethics professor who offered me a guest research position. And I drove. I had just got my driver's license, just bought a non-electric car, it was 97. Hadn't had a lot of driving experience because I'm a Londoner, we take the tube. But I drove to Harwich, took the ferry to Göteborg, and then drove to Oslo by myself, pre-mobile phone, and I was so inexperienced as a driver. I had a 1-litre engine that I didn't know to gear down from 4th gear to 2nd gear when I was going up hills, and I could literally feel the blood drain from my face the further up the hill I got. I got to Oslo at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was so freaked out by then that I double parked the car, threw my keys at my friend and said, "Sort it out, mate." One of the amazing things that happened to me, where I went to a lot of genetics courses, is we have to stand up and introduce ourselves, who we are and what we do. And at that time I must have been in a strange mood, and I must preface, this is before 9/11. I stood up and said, "My name's Homer, I'm a psychological terrorist." Can't say that now. There was an actor in that course. Don't ask me why there was an actor in that course. And he said, "I'm developing an idea and I would like you to be part of it." He was developing a live concert, live techno band, and he wanted me, the genetic counsellor, to write and perform genetic counselling lectures and medical ethic lectures, and we toured the Nordics. I would never have been able to do that had I remained in the UK. Obligatory, met a Norwegian, married the Norwegian. Actually, we got married in London, and you can see my nerd credentials. For my wedding photos, I asked everybody to look in the sky to look for UFOs. And they did. Fast forward a couple of decades, as a first-generation migrant, when you're not in your homeland, you end up reinventing yourself. So I went from being a genetic counsellor to a medical ethicist, starting a family, and then getting divorced, and I had to reinvent myself again. And this time, my sister, who'd been working in emergency response for over 20 years, said, "Why don't you try the humanitarian sector? You're logical, you're analytical, you've got ethics background, and what you really need is common sense and social activism, a heart for change." And I had all of those things. As a first-generation migrant to Norway, I saw the inequities, the differences between, and the challenges that I faced and people like me faced, and women of colour, just lots and lots of challenges. So I joined a UN agency that's based here in Norway, and I got to explore passions that I never knew existed, deepen my knowledge in gender issues, in protection and safeguarding, and combating trafficking in human beings. And last year, I was able to go on a mission. Oh, actually, say where it's. I was going to ask you, where do you think I was? I went to Afghanistan. That's me wearing my PPE, personal protection equipment, which has not been designed for women. Neither have car seats, by the way, in case you're wondering. So for women, they have gaps in the soft areas. So I was really hoping not to get shot. Kabul was one of the best experiences of my life. It was like coming home. My mother is of Pashtun origin, but they haven't lived in Afghanistan for 500 years. And my feet never touched the ground. We went from either the UN village, the Yunuka village, to the IOM compound in armoured land cruisers. But it was a very valuable experience, and it made me really grateful for the things that we take for granted. The first week that I came back, I would have anxiety if I had left the house. I live in Gumlabian, and I wasn't wearing a headscarf, and then I would learn to breathe and think, okay, it's all right, it's not the end of the world, because I'm not in Kabul. We had checkpoints and we had very strict rules that we had to follow so that we didn't fall afoul of the de facto government. But coming home, I actually spent 3 weeks at home, and then I deployed out to Juba, and apropos technology, only 9% of people in South Sudan have access to stable electricity. The water from the taps has typhoid. So there were lots of other types of dangers. It was still the same level of security as it was in Kabul, but it was different. We had curfews, but we were allowed to walk on the pavements. And it was like coming home for me, coming back to Africa. And the reason I put that photograph there, you can see my beautiful Afghan rug. That was one of the things that we were able to purchase because they came to the compound. With my danger money, in fact, because when you go on missions to countries like that, the UN actually pay you for staying alive every day. Extra, that is. But when I talked about Cagney and Lacey, now, by this time, I have 2 children, I have a home, I have duties, I have obligations. And it was so difficult, and I didn't realise how difficult it would be to be a mother abroad, working abroad, away from my children, away from my home. And since the time that I have been performing like at Gene Techno, I started writing poetry as a method of self-care, but I don't write about rivers and mountains and leaves falling off trees. I talk about gender equality, racism, discrimination, violence against women, being an internally displaced person, the challenges of integration, challenges of being menopausal. The struggle is real. So I would like to sum my talk up, because all these different threads that have woven together to form the fabric of my life, central to all of that is the fact that I am left-handed. And had I not been left-handed, I don't think I would have been in Norway today. I think I would have still been a genetic counsellor living a comfortable life in Norway, in the UK, in London, and not being challenged being a first-generation woman of colour, working in the humanitarian sector, trying to make the world a better place. But I don't stand alone. I stand on the shoulders of all the women that have come before me. I stand on the shoulders of Ada Lovelace, the first computer programmer. I stand on the shoulders of Emmeline Pankhurst and the suffragettes who gave women the vote, who fought for us to be able to vote. Florence Nightingale, who not only was a nurse, but she was a mathematician who practiced evidence-based medicine, decreasing the mortality of men. Of Marie Curie, who was not only awarded a Nobel once, but twice. She's got 2 Nobel Awards, and left-handed. And I hope that all of you are able to stand on our shoulders, because the vista that you see, there are so many spaces for you to occupy still in the seats of power, in making decisions, being part of peace negotiations, to lead companies to be on the boards of directors. We've had part of the way paved for us, and we hope that you will take the baton from us and carry it further to make the world that you want to live in. And I would just like to end, have I got a minute? If I may end with, it's a bit narcissistic, a poem that I wrote called Dare to be Different. Sometimes you don't want your colours to shine. Wouldn't it be heavenly if you could bleach them to white? But you can't, can you? It's not possible to hide the shimmering plumage you were born with. It's your birthright. Wear it with pride. Yes, it's easy to swim with the herd downstream, but every stroke you take carries you further from your dreams. Your heart will grow weary, your spirit will dull. On your bright plumage, let your freak flag unfurl. Life's a hard, winding journey. The trick is to show up. Don't judge yourself harshly for the stumbles and stops, for losing yourself momentarily when they say it's not possible. Not. So dare to be different. Let your plumage and courage show. Keep taking those steps forward, even though they say no. For history is made by the ones who took the first step and carried on their journey all the way to the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Homa Hassan, for that beautiful speech. Now we have our next speaker, Kim Evanson.
I'm gonna put the timer on. I was like, awesome. I was speaking at a military base in the Norwegian Armed Forces. And one of the male soldiers came up to me after the talk, super excited, and he was like, you know what? After the talk, I texted my best friend and I said, I love you. And his friend replied, are you okay, bro? Yeah, I'm good, he said. We had this guy from this organization called Brothers here, and he talked about the importance of friendship. And I just wanted to let you know that I love you. And his friend said, wow, that's cool. I love you too. Show me your friends and I will show you your future. Navigating our relationships well is crucial for a healthy life and a good mental health. My name is Kim Evanson, and in 2017 I founded Brothers, a non-profit dedicated to empowering boys and men to develop close and healthy friendships. And trust me, it's been an interesting journey. I remember in the beginning when I told people about my work. You want to hear some of the reactions I got? You ready? Good. Kim, are you saying that men's friendships aren't good enough? My answer to that is, there is always potential for growth. And I'm not saying that women's friendships are perfect, by the way. Yeah, but what about women's friendships? Aren't they important? Of course they are, but today, my focus is male friendships. Male friendships? Is that a gay thing or something? No, it's not. It's a friendship thing. But Kim, we don't need to learn more about friendship because we already know that. Well, if you sit here and you think you know everything about friendship, then I think you're one of those people who need to learn the most. I started Brothers because I saw a need. I saw a need in my own life, and I was like, not really shocked because it was a big need in many lives. I asked myself questions like, why do I find it so much easier to open up to almost any women about how I feel? But opening up to my best friend, my best bro, would feel uncomfortable or weird. Why do my friendships with the boys often tend to feel so empty? And boys, men in this room, you know what I'm talking about. Is a friendship with the boys more than just a beer at a bar, a casual wing out, now wingman, or just a casual hangout? Why is there something in me that tells me that as a man, I shouldn't really want to be vulnerable or to express love towards one of my friends? I long for something more, for authentic connection. But too many men have settled for shallow hangouts instead of genuine connection. We've accepted the lie that men don't connect so much on an emotional level, that we are simply activity-oriented. We don't talk, we don't share our feelings. We don't express love towards each other. We don't comfort each other like girls do. So we end up acting cool, keeping it uncomplicated and shallow, playing video games or grabbing a beer at a bar. Talking about last night's football game. And occasionally we drink a little too much. But at least it makes us say the words that otherwise would have been untold. I love you, bro. I love you so much. But I only tell them when I'm drunk. Okay, so when I speak, I tend to be all over the place. Normally I'm all over the place. So me writing a TED Talk has been somewhat of a challenge, but have mercy on me. Me sticking to a script is like a miracle. Okay, for the sake of those of you who like points, there are 3 points, 3 challenges that can hinder connection in male friendships. Are you ready? Is it exciting, by the way? Okay, if you don't like it, that's the door. Cool. I like to tell people that. It's fun. Anyway, number 1 is the taboo surrounding close male friendships. A girl once told me that she often frowns upon or makes fun of boys when they express love in their friendships. I asked her why, and she said, well, maybe it's because I don't see it that often. A professional football player once told me that friendship is really important to me, but it's taboo to talk about. We have friendships, but we don't talk about them. The first roadblock that can hinder connection in male friendships is the shame of talking about them in the first place. Number 2, a narrow-minded and at times unhealthy view on what it is to be a man. And it starts at a young age. In order to be one of the boys, you have to play the game. Carefully follow the unspoken rules. And by all means, never express weakness or anything that isn't considered manly. That may lead to public humiliation. A 3-year-old boy has no problem with expressing vulnerability, sensitivity, or love. And it's often these traits that we value the most about our kids. But as many boys grow up, they're told that these traits are considered feminine. And as a result, they avoid these expressions in their lives. This leads boys and men into relational and emotional starvation, and many men aren't even aware of it. One of the most common reasons I hear from guys to why they don't want to open up in their friendships is because they're afraid of being laughed at. And friendships built on insecurity, where men constantly have to prove their manhood, is a breeding ground for stupid decision-making and toxic attitudes. Okay, now we've done 2 points. Ready for the third? Okay. Number 3, the sexualization of love and closeness. And this one is an important one. It would be naive to think that our mindsets and our relationships are unaffected by the hypersexualized culture that we live in. In the West especially, we are constantly being exposed to sexual messages through entertainment, advertisements, and not least pornography. The words love and sex have been used interchangeably, and without being aware of it, we might have formed perceptions about love and closeness that aren't necessarily true or healthy. And it kills intimacy. And when I say the word intimacy, it's not sexual. It kills intimacy in a lot of friendships. And when I talk about this, I'm so used to people getting uncomfortable. Why? Because we recognize it. So many boys and men, they avoid closeness in their friendships just to make sure it won't get misunderstood. I love you, bro. No homo, by the way. I don't hear a lot of girls say, I love you, girl, no homo. Sorry, I had to do that. Some people don't like it, but, well, whatever. An honest conversation or a hug without a pat on the back might create suspicions. You better just play it safe. And society's corrupted view of manhood, where real men should think about sex all the time, doesn't really make it easier for us to express closeness either. I once taught at a junior high school, and I asked a 12-year-old boy what in my presentation moved him the most. You know what he said? Well, I kind of feel like as boys, we shouldn't really express that we love our friends. Do you want that for your sons? I don't. Help, I'm a man and I need comfort. But where does a man go when he needs comfort? A girl once told me that she has a lot of guy friends in her life and they all come to her with their problems. And she asked her, why don't you talk about that with the boys? No, we don't do that with the boys, I said. She's not the only girl who told me that. Throughout the last 6 years, I've had conversations with hundreds of boys and men about friendships. And I remember I asked an 18-year-old guy from the States this question: how do you comfort a girl? Well, that's easy. You just kind of you just hug her, let her cry. You don't have to say a lot. You can just be close. Awesome. But how do you comfort your bro, like your best guy friend? Oh, yeah, that's a weird question, but okay. Okay, I guess kind of you kind of be a little bit close, but maybe I don't know, maybe put an arm around his shoulder, but kind of casually. Don't be too gentle, because what if he's uncomfortable? Maybe I'll just sit on the opposite side of him just to keep it, safe. I don't know. Maybe I should try to help you, or maybe let's just go and grab a beer and get drunk. Some say that women are complicated, but if we men have to walk on eggshells around each other to comfort one another, we're pretty complicated ourselves. In the film 1917, I don't know if you've seen it, there is a scene that captures a soldier dying in his friend's arms. Can you imagine that? A raw display of vulnerability and connection. And I've asked myself, how would that scene look like if the dying soldier would lay here and I would stand 2-3 meters away and be like, sorry that you're dying, bro. Love you, man. No. Wow, who am I supposed to play PlayStation with now? That was like my favorite part about our friendship. None of you would have done that, right? But still, a soldier came up to me after a talk in the Norwegian Armed Forces, and I could see the regret in his eyes. And he said, a while back, one of my best friends, he was at the hospital and he died. And the boys were in the room but none of us dared to hold his hand or to be close to him. Because boys don't do that, right? I guess boys will be boys. The more I learn about friendship, human connection, and vulnerability, the more I realize how little I know, and how imperfect of a friend I am, but how important these relationships are, and they are worth fighting for. And that's what I'm doing. The loneliness that is haunting our society is not necessarily because we don't have enough people in our lives, it's because we lack intimacy and closeness. I would not have been standing here if it wouldn't have been for my own friends. They just called me and texted me right before this talk and they're like, Kim, I'm so proud of you. All the times I wanted to give up on brothers, but when I'm with my boys and with my friends, they tell me that they're so proud of me and they tell me to never give up. The best compliment I can get is when people compliment my friendships. When they say things like, you know what, I can see the love you have for each other. I want a friendship like that too. You know what I tell them? Thank you. But like anything worthwhile, it doesn't come without an effort. We've invested time and energy. We've had to drop the masks and walls and allowed ourselves to be vulnerable and known by each other. We call each other out when we see unhealthy attitudes. We cry on each other's shoulders when we need that. And we remind each other to be strong and to not give up. We laugh and joke around a lot. We have deep and meaningful conversations, and we stir one another up to live the lives we want that are filled with purpose and adventure. Lives that make a positive impact on the world around us. This talk is a call to action for everyone to create a culture where we champion and cheer on boys and men's relational needs and capacities. Not to tell men to be something we're not, but to encourage us to embrace our humanity. And ultimately, this is a call to action to men, regardless of your personality or interests, to embrace the power of brotherhood, to deepen your friendships. Tell your friend how much he means to you. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Create it. And if you find it difficult, it's probably because you haven't done it enough. It is time to recognize that the quality of these relationships is not just a matter of chance, but of choice. Because ultimately, your friendships are your responsibility. And I say this to you guys because I deeply care. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Kim. I hope we're all reflecting on our friendships right now and those who mean the most to us. Now we'd all like to welcome you to a 10-minute intermission before we begin the second half of our speeches for tonight. So please go out, grab a hot drink and some cinnamon buns. I hope you guys are all feeling energized after those hot drinks and those cinnamon buns. So now I think we're all ready for the next half of speakers, and I'd like to welcome Dr. June Jedabit to the stage.
Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think my collection's complete? Wouldn't you think I'm the girl who has everything? Look at this trove, treasures untold. How many wonders can one cavern hold? Looking around here, you think, sure, She's got everything. I've got gadgets and gizmos aplenty. I've got who's its and what's its galore. You want thingamabobs? I got 20. But who cares? No big deal. I want more. And that was the start of Ariel's demise. Well, okay. In the Disney version, she gets to keep her feet and the prince. But in the original 1837 tale, Ariel does not get her happy ending. But if we think about Ariel's cavern for a second, and her obsession with human things, things that are not of her world, there is something there that may resonate with those of us humans. A natural inclination to covet that which we don't have. Front row seats, a beachfront property, the latest tech gadgets, designer goods, bespoke fashion, an academic pedigree. A university professor once told a group of us undergraduate students about a phenomenon called postdoctorate blues, that upon completion of one's final degree, it was not uncommon for students to experience a void, a mild depression, now that what had been their life's focus for so long had suddenly come to an end. I had a hard time believing him. I thrived on challenge, earning good grades, taking on new projects, fueled my inner, quiet warrior. Until it happened to me. He was right. After 7 years of part-time coursework, study, research, analysis, and oh, so many words, it was all over. Emptiness. A fellow colleague said, "Congratulations, you finally earned your terminal degree." And somehow his use of the word terminal made me feel even worse. Thankfully, this hollow feeling didn't last very long, as these circumstances occurred right around the era of the great global pandemic. So I had a couple other thoughts floating through my head. And as I navigated lockdown in Amsterdam, walking past the crooked houses and along the canals, I would observe the fish and the ducks, the geese. I thought about how anguished we humans were, how burdened we felt by the unknown, while these creatures were none the wiser. I also thought of Jane Goodall. See, several years ago, I had the opportunity to attend the Parliament of the World's Religions event as a student participant. This conference welcomed thousands of spiritual leaders, peacemakers, and lay people from every possible faith. Hindus, Jews, Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, Sikhs. Imagine a space where hearts and minds are wide open, and every single soul is there to listen, learn, and explore pathways to peace. Reflecting on that experience does something to my heart every time. It was there where I saw Dr. Jane Goodall. What an aura. Silver hair tied back in a ponytail, simple quilted jacket, gentle smile. Her presence exuded peace. At Dr. Goodall's talk, she reminded us of the beauty of the natural world, where animals already live in harmony. Her study of chimpanzees spanned decades, offering insights on the evolution of human beings, our relationships, and survival skills. Survival skills. All living beings share the same goal: to survive. Yet, we humans, due to our highly advanced and sophisticated intellect, many of us think that we are above nature. Over time, we have demonstrated our extraordinary capacity to destroy, pulverize, extinguish, annihilate. What other living being has the audacity? After Dr. Goodall's talk, I was so moved. I had to go meet her, talk to her. But like a classic movie scene, the crowd gathered around her, and all I could see was a sea of heads. No chance I could get near her. Fast forward to the year 2020, the year of perfect vision, when the world comes to the collective realization that we've lost sight of what's important. For years, we've been driven to fill our pockets, fill our CVs, fill our egos, fill our closets. And for what? Tell me you didn't wear the same sweatpants for weeks. Yeah, the toxicity of achievement culture and societal pressures have led to us just scrambling to fill the void. And as it turns out, we really don't need all that much. In Sarah White's research on well-being, she explores topics like the quality of life, life satisfaction, and the economics of happiness. Her findings from a Bangladeshi village indicated that an ideal society was one where everyone lived in happiness with rice, clothes, and respect. It can be that simple. Back in Amsterdam, as I was observing these living creatures around me, mindfully going about their business, keeping their egos in check, because they have no egos, really, I realized that it took a global pandemic for us to keep us humans in check. As painful as 2020 was for humanity, this global pause was a beautiful byproduct of a tragic time. We slowed down, turned inwards, and we all know that once we were forced to be still for a little while, the drop in carbon emissions allowed our planet to breathe more easily. Only just. In mindfulness meditation practice, it is the breath that anchors us, steadies our thoughts, calms our angst. And in my research on mindfulness in schools, it was those students who engaged in mindfulness practice regularly who could recognize its influence on their thoughts, speech, and action. This is a mighty superpower that we all possess. This is what separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. A few years before the pandemic, I was headed to a work conference, and as I was disembarking the plane, I noticed an older lady walking in front of me. Silver hair, tied back in a ponytail, simple quilted jacket. No way. Jane Goodall was on my flight. As I sped up to catch up with her, I had no idea what I was going to say. Was I going to get an autograph, ask for a selfie? When I reached her, I caught her eyes and I said, "Dr. Goodall," to which she smiled. And I said, "Thank you for everything that you're doing, for everything that you've done." And to this she said, "Thank you for everything you're doing." Wow. As a school counselor, I've been supporting young people all my adult life. And as a university counselor, I may know a thing or two about international admissions and how to help students figure out what they want to do with their futures. But the truth is, my wish for all my students is for them to find the capacity to be humble and the courage to still the noise. You are enough. All of us already has everything we need to create our own butterfly effect simply by being still. By settling our thoughts and taming our desires, we all have the collective capacity to take better care of all living things. So, thank you for making thoughtful choices for our planet, our communities, but most of all, for yourselves. Khop Khun Kha.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zay, for that insightful speech. Now, our next speaker is Benjamin Long, who is a student at OIS.
All right, can everybody hear me? Perfect. So it's great to see all of you today. And just today, I'd like to introduce myself just real quick. I'm Ben Mendenhall, and like what Vicky said, I'm a student here, and this is my second year here at OIS. And as I'm not nearly as professional or as successful as half of these speakers here, I would like to talk about just a little about the butterfly effect and how it's been personal in my own life. So when I thought about the butterfly effect, the very first thing that came to my head was, what does it mean? And to make it easier for you, it is not the movie that came out in 2004. It can be more referred as the theory or the idea that our world is deeply interconnected. Isn't that weird to think about? That how every little decision or big decision that we make can have a larger outcome within our life. So everyone here today most likely has experienced this without even knowing it. So I'd like to discuss a little bit about my own life and how small choices I have made in the past open to many opportunities that I have experienced now. So growing up as a foreign service kid, I can easily say that the world is small and connected. I've made multiple connections from Colombia to the United States to Israel and now Norway. So, and as a 19-year-old, I can see the many benefits and experiences that have happened throughout my life. And these benefits have been very amazing and awesome. But more specifically, I'd like to discuss about my own high school education. Unfortunately, during the span of 2 years, I had to attend 4 different schools. Complications during the pandemic made me leave my first boarding school in Virginia, making me move across all the way from the United States back to home in Idaho. And this can be considered as one of my first butterfly effects. And as I was there in Idaho, I enjoyed my time. I made new friendships, but I was still missing something. But I was confused because I was happy there, I made great new friendships, and I was surrounded by a familiar environment. So why would I feel like this? It solely came down to the idea and what was best for me. And I knew that in the back of my mind, I was missing that challenge within my education. So with this in mind, I looked up for other options and I landed on a different boarding school in Utah. So upon arrival, I soon realized that I was in the school in the middle of nowhere that only had 300 kids that attended the school. So you can easily expect that I knew every name of each student, each teacher, into the local cat that we all knew. His name was Garfield. He was a cute cat. But this was very similar to my time in Idaho. I made new connections in Utah, but I learned more about who I was and learned more about myself and who I wanted to become. So as I excelled in all my classes, I wanted to experience more than just education. So I branched out and put myself more out there. I did different things like taking different leadership roles. I attended different clubs, and I even went ahead and started my rock star lifestyle and sang in front of the whole talent show. And this is something that my younger self would totally freak out about. I'm here today talking in front of you, doing this TED Talk. So even though I was learning more of who I was, I still felt something was missing. And now I felt hopeless and confused on what the next steps would be on my life. Until I was given the option to attend the very IB school out in Norway. And I did not know a lick what IB meant, or even where Norway was on a map. I was just excited and intrigued by the idea. I packed up my bags as fast as I could, and I headed all the way out to Norway. So here we go again with this very same routine of making friends and learning a whole new different system. Yet this time, I didn't have that same familiar feeling back in Idaho and back in Utah. Yet, don't get me wrong, it was a rough couple of months. Being here in the very dark and cold winter for my very first time was very difficult. But I truly felt like I landed in the place where I belonged. And I'm going to read off a script now, and I just want to make sure that I'm not messing it up. But I would like to quote the Hawaiian author Serge Kahili King. And he says, "We are all connected to everyone and everything in the universe. Therefore, everything one does in individual affects the whole. So all thoughts, words, images, prayers, blessings, and deeds are listened to by all that is." And this quote really stands out to me because at times I think we do really forget that we are connected to everything. The things that we say or do truly do have an impact on our surroundings. And I would like to share a recent example that I've experienced in a moment of confusion and uncertainty. So last year, a friend of mine from an old boarding school back in Virginia had contacted me. He said that he was going to give a speech in front of the whole school and was asked to talk about his own experience from moving from Vietnam all the way out to the United States. And then he went ahead and told me that he was going to give a talk and shout me out. And this was strange because I had not talked to him for almost 2 years. Yet here I was being mentioned in front of my whole school. This event led me to think about how our own actions have an impact on others and can create larger outcomes. So, as my life sounds like something out of a book, I can say that these tiny decisions to better myself each chapter have opened a multitude of doors and have led me to where I am now. For those who are here today, whether you are younger or older, this idea of the butterfly effect can be seen in the many decisions that we make right now. So I would like to leave with you all tonight that we are all given a specific path and a reason for this path. And if we continue to make the right decisions within our life, these hidden doors will open. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for taking us on that whirlwind of a journey. I kind of want to visit Utah and Idaho now, too. Please welcome Cassandra Clark to the stage now. She's our final speaker of the night, so please give it up to her.
Okay. Hello. I hope you're all still awake. I will try my hardest to keep it that way. My name is Cassandra Clark. I am an OIS parent. I am new to Norway. I've only been here a few months. We moved here for my husband's job, and that is not at all what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. So, first, I'm going to ask everyone in the audience to think about whether you maybe have felt guilty or reluctant to say no to something that just didn't feel quite right. Something that deep down in your gut, maybe you didn't want to do, but thought that you had to do, or that you should do. That sense of obligation, propriety, maybe loyalty to someone or something. Or maybe it's the steadfast determination that you've been taught not to quit. Tonight, I'm here in defense of the word no. I'm on a one-woman mission to rebrand and reclaim the word no, and to reassure you that when you do claim your no, the world will not in fact fall apart. and things just might turn out a lot better than you expect. So let's start at the beginning. Let's re-examine our relationship with the word no and think about where things maybe went awry. As children, starting about age 2, we quickly learn to love the word no. Thank you. Any parents in the audience will vividly remember the no phase of toddlerhood. Some of you third country kids in the audience may have even learned no in multiple languages, as my toddler recently demonstrated. That's extra fun. Little kids use the word no all the time. It's their way of exercising this early instinctual need for autonomy and boundaries. These needs are hardwired into us as human beings. They're there to protect us. They're key to our survival. So when and why do we learn to ignore them? Let's think about the parent of that toddler for a moment. The parent who is daily negotiating with a 2-year-old to wear hats and gloves in the middle of winter, to sleep when they are visibly overtired, to take medicine if they're sick, to eat something other than cheese sticks and yogurt. Parents tend to view the no phase as oppositional and difficult, maybe even as a behavioral challenge to be solved. We push our kids to share, to get along, to compromise. We're trying to teach them how to get along within the family unit, within their schools, and within society. But each time we do this, we slowly erode the child's autonomy. We teach them that no is not always an acceptable answer. So very early on, children learn to feel the push and pull between what the self needs or desires and what society demands of them. And by the time any of those toddlers are young adults, they might feel like their whole lives up to that point has been a series of instructions, imposed expectations, arguments, negotiations, and compromises. That inner voice has likely dwindled from a screaming no to a whimpering inner reluctance or indecision that goes unspoken. I remember feeling like I was on some predetermined track all my young life, with little control over what that path looked like. You go to school, and then you go to college, and then you get married and have kids, and so on and so forth. That was just the path. It felt like a treadmill that I was constantly running on and trying not to fall off of. Thankfully, our young adult years offer us the opportunity to reconnect with our inner autonomous selves and to reclaim our inner voices. Maybe we can even rediscover how to say no. For me, once I was out in the working world, I quickly realized that the only person who was going to say no on my behalf was me. I came to appreciate how important that was for my own autonomy, and that boundaries were an important thing. I left college and I started working at a very intense law firm as a paralegal, working 60 to 80-hour weeks, subsisting on takeout and not sleeping very much. And I realized if I didn't learn to say no, I was going to burn out very quickly. So when I went to graduate school, and I tried my hand at a dual degree program in law and international relations that I thought would surely set me up for a great job, right? Everybody tells you like a law degree is the key to finding a good job after you graduate. I faced a real dilemma because it turns out I hated law school. Like deeply, deeply abhorred everything about it. And I was rather terrible at it. I would study for hours and hours and barely pass my classes. I was miserable, and this was completely foreign to me because my whole life I had been a straight A student on that path, and I always knew what was next. And for the first time in my life, it just felt off. I went home at the semester break and I cried. I said, I don't want to go back. I don't want to keep doing it. But I felt like I should. I had made this commitment. I felt like I should continue. And, the job prospects thing, which for us Gen Xers, finding a job was a really important thing back then. And it was a tough market. I really thought the law degree was like the key. So after the semester break, I went back and I made the incredibly difficult decision to say no to law school. I shocked my parents, especially my parents. Everyone was pretty shocked. In hindsight, this was one of the best decisions I have ever made in my life. And I'll tell you why. Because it allowed me to focus 100% on the other half of that dual degree in international relations, which is what I was really deeply passionate about. I loved my classes, I made lasting friends, and I connected with some really life-changing mentors who helped me grow as a person and helped kickstart my career. It was in my international relations program that I was invited to spend a semester in Geneva, Switzerland, working with the UN at the World Health Organization. And then in Washington, D.C., working for the UN Information Center and coming to understand how the UN interacts with its member states, and particularly the US Congress. Those experiences ignited a passion in me for policymaking and multilateralism and inspired me to apply for something called the Presidential Management Fellowship, which is kind of a way to get into government from graduate programs in the United States. And then I faced another no moment that would have a ripple effect on the rest of my life as well. While my dream had been to go to work for the US Department of State, my first job offer did not come from the Department of State. It came from another government agency. And I took it. Gen X, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Never say no to a good job. So I took the job. And sure enough, a few weeks later, the dream job came through. And I was in the very difficult position of having to say no to the first job that I had already made a commitment to. So, although I felt terrible for backing out, I knew that that was the right decision for me. And here I am 15 plus years later, still with the State Department, married to someone who works at the State Department. Looking back at some of these inflection points, the major inflection points, the major decision points in my life, I can unequivocally say that some of the best decisions I have made were decisions that involved saying no, walking away from things that didn't align with my personal goals or my personal priorities, and making tough decisions that often shocked or disappointed people in my life. These decisions were terrifying at the time, but absolutely pivotal and necessary in hindsight. And the sense of overwhelming relief that I feel after making them is how I know that it's the right decision. That always reassures me and reaffirms for me that it is the right decision. Perhaps the most beautiful thing about saying no to things that don't bring you joy, as Marie Kondo would say, or things that don't align with your goals or your priorities, is that it also creates the space for you to say yes to things that do align. And as you learn to listen to that inner voice, you can better discern which things, jobs, people, friendships, relationships, advance your ultimate goals and which ones do not. And in this space, you can start to recognize those decisions that have the butterfly effect. The decisions that will define your life and shape your life. And you will feel more and more empowered to make those decisions and own those decisions. In other words, learning to say no and knowing when it may be okay to walk away or even to quit might just be the key to your success and the catalyst for some unexpectedly wonderful twists and turns in your life. So, although I've largely failed on the audiovisual aspect of this assignment. I wanted to give you all just a snapshot of where saying no and then saying yes to the dream job has taken me. It has been a wild ride with very many unexpected twists and turns. And I encourage you all to find your inner voice, find your inner no, and create the space to find your yes.
Though I don't know if our teachers are going to be so happy about us all learning to say no. So I would like to give one more big round of applause to all our lovely speakers. So this was the very first TEDx event at Oslo International School, like I mentioned earlier. And we are also happy to have you here tonight and to have you experience this with us. So thank you so much for coming.